How to make a cup of tea. Today, I'm going to be talking about black tea, which is the drink traditionally served in the British Isles. The plant it comes from is called Camellia sinensis, and I'm only talking about traditional English tea. Green tea is a whole other thing that's made a completely different way. So that's a topic for someone else to do another time. The difference between black tea and green tea is that the tea leaves are dried and fermented to make black tea, where green tea is just the leaves. So we're going to start with how not to make tea. If you've ever ordered tea in an American restaurant, this is what you get: a pot of hot water with a tea bag on the side. I don't know what beverage this is, but it's not tea. The other way not to make tea is do not, under any circumstances, make it in the microwave. When my husband and I were dating and he started proposing, I would not accept his marriage proposal until he proved that he could make a cup of tea. And the first time he tried to make me a cup of tea, he made it in the microwave, and the water gets scummy and icky, and I wouldn't even taste it. So he's very long-suffering and did eventually learn to make tea the proper way. So let's talk about equipment for a minute. Tea can be made right in the cup with a tea bag, which we're going to do this morning. It can also be made in a teapot. And to make it in a teapot, you can use loose tea, which is better and more flavorful, but it's a pain because you've got to deal with the leaves. One way of dealing with leaves is to use a tea strainer. This is a tea ball. I've got another one that is a tea spoon. The problem with these is when the tea leaves get wet, they expand. And so even if you only fill it half full, the leaves are so crowded in this ball that the water can't flow through and you don't get as good a cup. So I just like to put loose tea in my teapot, and then when you're pouring it out, you can pour it through a fancy tea strainer if you have one, or if you don't have one, you can just use an ordinary kitchen strainer. Works fine. Or you can just let the tea leaves settle in the bottom of the cup and try to remember that they're there and not drink that last swig. I'm resetting my kettle. I already brought the water to a boil a few minutes ago because I didn't want you to have to wait. Normally you would never do that. The way you make proper tea is freshly drawn water brought to a rolling boil. In normal circumstances, I would never boil the water twice. It has to do with the oxygen content, and freshly boiled water has the most oxygen, but it needs to be a full rolling boil. If you're doing it in a pot on the stove instead of a kettle, the bubbles have to get all the way to the middle of the surface of the water so that it's a full rolling boil. Okay, types of tea. My go-to brand of tea is Tetley's British Blend, which you can find in most supermarkets. Once I open the box, I like to put it in a airtight container that the light can't get to keep it fresher longer. My favorite kind of tea is Yorkshire Gold, which interestingly comes from a company called Taylors of Harrogate, but in an interesting reversal of colonialism. Taylors of Harrogate, the Yorkshire company, is now owned by Tata in India. There's also loose tea. When I was at the Stone Mountain Highland Games in October, I bought a box of Scottish breakfast tea, and it's loose. So we'll also be making loose tea. So the question people ask is, if you're using loose tea, how do you know how much to use? The standard rule is 1 spoonful per person plus 1 for the pot. I think that's too strong. I just do 1 per cup. This teapot is a 3-cup teapot. So I'm going to do three spoonfuls. 1, 2. Great. And I'm also going to make a tea bag. Tea. This is my Tetley's. And now we need the water. The way you tell your water is boiling is there's steam coming out of the pot. I can actually see the bubbles and there's steam coming out, so I know that is a full rolling boil. So I'm pouring in my water. If you would set the 3-minute timer. So tea, the strength of the tea is based on how much tea you put in the cup and how long it steeps for. I typically like 3 minutes. So put my kettle down. What trivets on there is. Okay. There's a huge controversy. I drink my tea with milk, as most people do. They'll usually put in milk without asking you. There's a huge controversy about whether you put the milk in first or whether you put the milk in second. One of the stories is in the early days of fine china, the quality was not, they didn't have good quality control, and sometimes the cup would shatter or crack. And so if you put the milk in first, it cools things down and tempers the tea, so it's less likely to crack your cup. Today, the quality of ceramics in China is much improved, and that's usually not a problem. There are people who claim they can tell the difference in taste between milk in first and milk in second. I can't tell the difference. Did you set the timer? Thank you. We have our 3-minute timer going. So the ceremony of tea in England, there's a couple of different ones, and it always drives me crazy because Americans always talk about high tea because it sounds fancy, but high tea isn't. If you go to England and have high tea, it's what you get on a farm instead of the evening meal. It's the people coming in from the fields who are hungry, and you serve them sausage rolls and pork pie and savory things. If you've read the when the dwarves come to tea in Bilbo's house in The Hobbit, that's high tea. What people typically mean when they say high tea is afternoon tea or cream tea. Cream tea is when you have tea and scones, and my family is from the county north of Yorkshire, and we say scones. Some people say scones, but I grew up saying scones. That is served with something called clotted cream or Devon cream. And again, there's a huge controversy. In Devon, you cut your scone in half, you put your clotted cream and then your jam, and then you put the lid back on. In Cornwall, the next county over, you put jam on the bottom and then the Devon cream and then your top of your scone. And it's a huge controversy. I like my cream on the bottom. It works like spackle. It kind of pulls things together. And there's our 3 minutes. So I'm going to use my fancy tea strainer. Pour out, whoa, pour out my hot tea. It gets a little hot, this particular teapot. Some teapots are made so that the handle doesn't get hot, but not this one. This is my beautiful brass tea service that my husband found at a garage sale. I'm not a garage sale person. I think it's other people's junk. But one day he came back, and I also don't like garage sales because the reason I don't practice is I don't like to bargain. I'd rather just say, tell me what it costs. I'm taking out my tea bag now. Please do not squeeze your tea bag. Just lift it out. and I'm putting the milk in. So Jim came home from the garage sale with this beautiful brass tea service, new in the box for $10. So I can't ever complain about him going to a garage sale ever again. So I now have 2.
Is somebody recording this? That's the first time she's ever said that on the record.
He was right.
Good question.
Yes. Question?
Somebody had a question?
Yeah, the question was whether this is being recorded.
Oh.
Geraldine?
Oh, yes, this is absolutely being recorded.
And again, it's a little too hot to drink, so I will give it a minute. Any other questions? And that's what it looks like. That's about how much milk I like. People argue about how much milk and less milk and more milk.
I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Why are you not supposed to squeeze the tea bag?
Why not?
It makes it bitter. If you squeeze it out, that's where the bitterness is. And I've seen this one. I've seen directions on packages that say do not squeeze your tea bag.
I have a question, Heather.
Yes.
What kind of milk do you use? Do you use like whole milk or half and half or skim milk?
I like 2%. Some people put cream in their tea, but that's too rich for me. I just like typical 2% milk if I can get it. And I have to confess, I'm a little bit of a hoarder. When all of this started, I went to Target and bought 3 boxes of mini moos that are shelf stable, half and half, so that I could still have milk in my tea if I couldn't get milk. There's a story of my son when he was little. We were almost out of milk and we were having breakfast, and he said, "It's okay, Mom, I'll eat my cereal dry. I want you to have milk to put in your tea because I know how grouchy you get if you don't get your tea."
Oh.
So that is how to make a traditional cup of English tea. Cheers.
Geraldine says cheers.
Are there any other questions?
Yes.
TJ has a question, I think.
No, I didn't have I was just saying thank you.
Oh.
That was-
Oh. This was awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
for having me.
Heather.
It was fun.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Heather, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I can't tell.